Hey everybody, Aaron Blaise here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Aaron's Art Tips. This is going to be a really quick one today. The other day I had a friend of mine, Jim Jackson, was in town, and we were reminiscing. He was an old buddy of mine from the Disney days, and we've known each other way back since before Beauty and the Beast, back in the early 90s, like 1990. And we were going over some stuff, and we were talking about some of the old films we worked on. We were talking about Beauty and the Beast, and he and I were both giving a talk at one of the colleges here in town. And one of the things we were talking about is subtlety in animation. And I just wanted to kind of just throw this out as a reminder, just do a quick video on reminding you guys that, you know, it's not how much we move our characters, it's why we move our characters. Sometimes we don't want to move them at all. Sometimes we want to move them just a very little bit. Sometimes we want to move them all over the place. But moving your characters does not equal bringing it to life. What brings your character to life is your character thinking. And so sometimes it's just the subtlest of animation to get your character to think that will show the audience that your character is alive. I have one very short little scene, a shot that I did in Beauty and the Beast. I did a whole bunch of shots, but there's this one shot of Beast in Beauty and the Beast where Belle has just given herself up in place of her father, and the Beast has grabbed her father and dragged him out and sent him off to go back to the town. And Lumiere is in the little in the inset there in the wall, and he says, "Sir, since the young lady's going to be with us for quite some time, maybe you could give her a room that's a little bit more comfortable." And he goes, "Grrr," and he just growls at him, and he goes, "Oh, then again, maybe not." And then the Beast goes up, and he sees Belle, and Belle is crying, and it stops him in his shoes, in his tracks. He's not wearing shoes. And she says, and she's crying, and she says, "You didn't even let me say goodbye. I'll never see him again. You didn't let me say goodbye." And this stops Beast. And this is the shot that I animated for that scene. And you see that he's thinking and he feels bad. And then he goes, "I'll show you to your room." He wasn't planning on putting her in her room, but because she was crying and it sent him aback a little bit, that he decided to change his mind. And so I want you to see the subtlety. There's a little bit of movement. He's not moving all over the place, but he's thinking. It's all in his eyes. And so he's scratching his ear and looking around, and then he looks at her and straightens up and he says, "I'll show you to your room." So here's the shot. He's thinking, "I'll show you to your room." You can actually see where he makes the decision, and it's all done very, very subtle. And I wanted it to be all done with his eyes. You see him thinking, and then he looks at her and goes, "Okay, I'll show you to your room," and he walks off. That's what separates Disney animation, Pixar animation, DreamWorks animation, is taking the time to really delve into the character and get subtle with it and get your characters to come to life. This is something we worked on over and over and over for years and years. You know, I've been animating for 30 years, and it's something I still I'm learning to do, and I strive to put into my work. So that's the piece of advice I want to try to give you is, you know, try as much as you can to separate yourself from how you're moving your character. That's not what's important. What's important is what your character is thinking. Don't animate what your character is doing. Animate what your character is thinking. Okay? Now here is the shot finished. So here he comes in. Let's blow this up a little bit. There we go. So he comes into the room, and this is where she's crying, and she says, "You didn't even let me say goodbye.
You didn't even let me say goodbye.
I'll never see him again." And this is where it's all cleaned up, and "I'll show you to your room." Okay? One more time.
You didn't even let me
But
say
now,
goodbye.
you know, even the littlest shots, you know, you never want to take, even the smallest shots, you don't want to take them for granted, because they all mean something. Every shot means something. Every shot is a connector or a star, But you want to make sure that you give equal importance to every shot so that everything comes together really nicely. And in this case, this could have been a very, it could easily have been a throwaway shot. But I wanted very much for it to kind of hit him in the chest. You know, in the shot before, he was angry. And he comes up, but her crying set him off to where he felt bad. That is where you see he has a heart. And he's a guy that's worth fighting for. Okay? So, go on out. Have a great week. I hope you learned something today. Be subtle with your animation. Think about what your characters are thinking, not what they're acting, or not what they're doing, okay? Go out, put some beauty back into the world, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks. Bye. Now, if you're interested in more animation lessons, I've got several courses over on my site at creatureartteacher.com. I've got the fundamentals of animation. I've got acting for animation. I've got all kinds of stuff. So go on over to creatureartteacher.com and check out my animation courses. They're pretty cool. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.